Okay, everyone, welcome back. So, I recently did a kind of a brief video explaining the Queen's Gambit, and that was like just a short video, only like 30 seconds, just kind of introduce it. And so now I said, well, I should probably go a little bit more in depth with that, because the Queen's Gambit, I think, deserves a bit more than that. So this is going to be a little bit more in depth about that. So, d4, d5, c4, this is the Gambit move, the pawn to c4. And first thing to know is the Queen's Gambit is not the true Gambit, compared to something like the King's Gambit, because there are lines that you can play where there's no real way for the black pieces to hold on to this pawn. Like, it just doesn't always work out that way for the black pieces. And so it's kind of hard to say it's a true Gambit, but, we call it the Queen's Gambit because it has the basic idea, you're trying to clear away a center pawn, which, okay, let's say say the black pawn is to take, well, then you could get the pawns on e4 and d4, kind of the dream center that people want. Okay, so we're going to really focus on the Queen's Gambit declined here, which is pawn to e6. You're declining to take the pawn. You're saying, no, I'm not going to take the pawn on c4. I'm just going to hold on to it by playing the pawn to e6 and defend my pawn here. Now, if you take, well, I'll still have a center pawn that's helping to hold my center. And they get control of it. And, I'm probably going to put up some other videos that are kind of explaining how, there's the accepted and there's the slap and things like that. But for this one, we're really going to look at the declined. So yeah, knight c3, knight f6. Both sides are developing. This is kind of the main idea. Bishop g5 this is the main variation we're going to look at first. And after that, okay, bishop e7, knight f3. You develop your pieces out. Both sides, it's just pretty logical, I think. You castle, pawn e3. So this is one of the big differences for the position here. If you notice, the black squared bishop for the white pieces and the light squared bishop for the dark pieces. That sounded kind of confusing to say. The dark squared bishop for the white pieces, light. Yeah, it sounds kind of confusing when I said that. But anyways, the point is this bishop is outside of the chain, whereas this light bishop is blocked in by its pawns, and that's going to be a really big problem for the black pieces for the Queen's Gambit declined. And this is really a big cause of a lot of trouble for the black pieces. It's kind of similar to the French defense. A lot of the problem is the light squared bishop. If the black pieces can solve that problem, then it's pretty good for them. But this is just something they're going to have to watch out for. Otherwise, they can wind up passive. So let's keep going. Let's go ahead and let's look through just some more ideas of what happens. Rook c1. So here is kind of where the battle for the tempo, and at least that's what I hear it referred to a lot of, is you want to avoid moving this light squared bishop if you can. Ideally, you want to be able to recapture this pawn on c4 while developing the bishop. That's why you don't just play something like bishop d3 or e2 here, because, okay, yeah, you want a castle, but ideally, you'd like to get the bishop to c4 in one move. So usually, there's like this battle going on where neither side, wants to be the one to use an extra tempo. And usually the black pieces will wait until after something like bishop d3 and then take. That way the black pieces say, ha, I made you move the bishop twice. Okay, knight d5. This is kind of one of the moves that can help free the black pieces, something like knight d5. And the idea is that you'll get some exchanges like taking, and all of these exchanges are going to take place. And then the black pieces can play the pawn to e5. Notice that now this light squared bishop is going to have a little bit more of a future here. And also the black pieces are hitting the center. And so it's pretty even, and the white pieces are a little bit better, but the black pieces are still pretty solid. And this is kind of one of the main kind of ideas that you'll see, and the Queen's Gambit declined. And so this is kind of the basic idea of some of the strategy here. Okay, let's go back to after e6. We're gonna look at another type of variation you can see happening. So bishop g5. So the first few moves are going to be the same, but here instead of knight to f3, we're going to see what happens if the white pieces decide to take. And this is called the exchange variation because you guessed it, you exchange the pawns. So e3, pawn c6. And this is going to be a very different type of a game. This is going to be a little bit more positional, I think. Well, the Queen's Gambit in general is positional. But let's just see how this works. So there's really actually two types of game plan you can have here in this type of variation. The one is the positional line, which if I play the Queen's Gambit exchange, I'll usually go for that one. I don't play the Queen's Gambit as much, so the slower, less critical variations are usually a good idea. Here you have the option of either going knight to f3 or knight to e2. And the idea is if you want to go knight e2, you can play for f3 and e4. That's the more attacking, more aggressive variation. And you'll play to get a big center, you'll play to attack. Maybe even you might consider castling queenside or something like that. Or maybe, okay, you castle kingside your rook, maybe after f3 or 4 if there's exchanges, maybe you open the f-file, something like that. And the other idea, let's go back here, is, okay, something like this. Okay, you want to play knight f3, and if you play knight f3, you aren't going to get that idea of playing the pawn to f3, but you're going to play the more positional line, which is something like, okay, after castling, all this happens, you're going to push b4, a4, and you're going to slowly push off on the queen side. And that's a very, slower, more positional game. Okay, let's go back again. Let's take a look at one more type of line you can see here. So again, it kind of starts off the same way. Oh, wait. My bad, I actually clicked on the wrong variation there. I realized I clicked on bishop e3. Oh, no, not bishop e3, bishop e7. After bishop g5, bishop b4. I didn't realize I clicked on bishop b7 when I first went through. Okay. Bishop to b4, and you're pinning the knight. This is going to lead to very different positions than the first. This is going to be a little bit different, but let's just see here. So, this is called the Ragozin, I believe. Okay, so knight f3 and h6. Okay, if h6 you can take. If knight to b7. Let's take a look at this, because this can get a little bit complicated. Okay, so e3, c5, yeah, so again, you can already tell it's looking a little bit different if the black piece is played like this. So they have this, which obviously doesn't look fun if you're not careful, and there's also potentials for knight e4 if you're not careful, and if you're not careful, you can end up in some complications. And you can see the game is a little bit more complicated, I would say, than some of the other variations that are very strategic. And anyways, this is kind of a good intro to the Queen's Gambit decline and some of the main variations. And just some kind of some game plans that you can try to use. And so if you see this come up in your game, now that you have some ideas that you can use, you kind of see some of the game plans, and hopefully this will help you out in your games. Alright, that's all.